Hello, welcome to Pabineau First Nation. As you're probably well aware, and you've heard already, we're a very busy little small community and very active not only in the community but in the region as well. When we look at what's happening within the community itself, you've probably heard of the houses that are being built, the fourplexes that are being built, which are going to enable families to come back into the community. Affordable housing, housing that people are going to be able to live in and actually still live. We all know that the housing crunch is hurting everybody out there, not only First Nations, but the region as well. So for us, we're very excited to be able to address some of the housing shortages within our First Nation community. As well, we're looking at a daycare, which is going to help house our children within our daycare facility. We're looking at the opportunity of possibly allowing people who are outside of Pabineau First Nation to utilize the daycare as well at a smaller cost. These are things we have to look into because there are liability issues as well. We're also looking at a gym within the First Nation community, which will enable the health of our members, which is very important. So those are the things we're building within the community. We also have a salmon interpretation center we're looking at, along with a fish hatchery, which will enable us to ensure the safety of salmon in the Nipisiguit River for years and years to come. As stewards of the land, it's important that we take that step to ensure that the salmon are here for the next 7 generations. And we're very excited about that. And it's going to be a partnership with ourselves, NB Power, as well as Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and as well as we're looking at as a COA and Tourism NB. We also have the falls, where we're looking at a possible zip line opportunity up there, which will bring people to the region. That's something where it's in the early stages, and we're looking at that, as well as a walking bridge to get from one side of the falls to the other. Those are things that are going to enhance the area and make people come here and visit this beautiful region. Not just our beautiful community of Pabineau First Nation, but the whole region as a whole, because we have a lot to offer up here in the northern part of the region. On the development side, on the economic side, we have a gas station and strip mall that are in the stages now where they've gone to tender, and we're just waiting now to, it's been awarded, and work should start very soon on laying down the water, the sewage, the drainage, and then of course the paving. And then after, the next step will be putting in the infrastructure, which is very exciting. It's going to bring some employment into the region, and it's also going to bring some opportunity for stores to develop within the region. So these are some of the things we're working on within Pabineau First Nation. But when you look outside of Pabineau First Nation, it's important too, because the region has to develop. We're working hard with the mayors of Belledune, Greenpoint, Point-Vert, Petit-Rocher, Nigadoo, and Beresford, because together we're able to ensure that we have more development in the region, and we're all going to be, if the region develops, we all benefit from that. So it's very important that we work together. So in that concept, we've been working hard with the Port of Belledune on a green energy hub, which could be huge for this region. Not only for this region, but for the province of New Brunswick and for Canada as a whole. We could be one of the major exporters of green energy, hydrogen specifically, to go out into the market. And we all know what's happening in the world right now with Ukraine and the shortages there. So it's important that, on the fuel side, this could address some of those issues. So these are things we're looking at, along with obviously any other opportunities that are out there. And we're always banging tires and looking and seeing what we can do by working together in the region to develop ourselves together. And by working together, we're going to be able to achieve huge things in this region. We have to bring prosperity back to the north. We were at one time and we lost a lot of our industry. Now it's time to refocus and get ourselves back into that groove. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. And again, Gwe, and hopefully we will see you up in our community, and you're always welcome to visit Pabineau First Nation.
It's great to have the opportunity to speak about the journey that we're embarking on. And I think before we get to the journey, destination of where we want to go, I think we have to understand that, for example, Canada does not have a good record with respect to working with Indigenous peoples overall. I mean, it's an understatement to say that it was a bad relationship. It hasn't been good. You know, you've got the records of the residential schools. You've got the records of the Indian Act, a whole whack of things that really come back to the fact that you know, it was really a situation where you end up with a colonialist kind of attitude, basically, is what I'm saying. I think what you see is you've got you know, a superior race coming in and saying, we know what's right. I mean, you just have to look at the doctrine of discovery, for example, going back to the churches, where, you know, you come to a foreign land, you look at the people that are there and plant the flag, all the while looking at them as though they didn't exist. And then the follow-up with that, the superior kind of attitude, is something that exists. But, you know, this is a great country. We have to move forward in a very positive way, in partnership, and make Canada a great place. To do that, I think we have to understand a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I alluded to the fact of decolonization. Decolonization, or I'm sorry, I should say about colonization, but going from colonization, getting into decolonization, which means you change the attitude and you treat people as equal. Give them the opportunity to move forward with their own culture, with their language, with their values. And the next step in moving forward would be an indigenization kind of approach. What that means is accepting in the education system, accepting a way of life. For example, indigenization, a good example of that would be, you know, what's happening in the climate. Elders talking about, you know, the climate change, the impact that it has, saying, you know, Mother Nature is breathing, Mother Nature is living. Mother Nature can be very cruel. You know, when you put bad things into the earth, when you put bad things into the air, when you put bad things into the water, there's a consequence to that. So the indigenization means accepting, you know, some of the values, some of the understanding that Indigenous peoples have. And the other thing, obviously, is ongoing reconciliation. And that's a process that doesn't stop. It's working together collaboratively, hand in hand. And both Indigenous peoples and other citizens of this great country of ours have a role to play with ongoing indigenization, ongoing reconciliation, and decolonization. So I think the idea is to try and deal with the past as we move forward in a positive way. I think when we're looking at, you know, some of the things that we've seen as a way forward is, for example, having proper structures in place, good governance, good accountability, capacity, to be able to seize the opportunities that we have in front of us. For example, in terms of a structure, we set up an economic development corporation here where we separate business from politics. And largely to say, okay, we have capacity in running those businesses and separate that from politics altogether. And working in partnership is very important. One of the things that we have here at Pabineau is I think a saying that we live by day in, day out, is partnership's the key to success. We're not myopic. We look at our surrounding area and say, look, we are all in this together. What's good for the surrounding area is good for Pabineau, it's good for everybody. We've looked at partnerships in terms of signing protocol agreements with local communities, with organizations, Port of Belledune being one, the City of Bathurst being another. Opportunities New Brunswick, etc. We've also signed MOUs with a number of companies where we work collaboratively on different projects as we move forward. So I think we are looking at positioning ourselves not just for traditional companies or traditional businesses. We're looking at, for example, the whole area of clean energy. I talked about the fact that we, as Indigenous people, understand, the importance of Mother Nature, Mother Earth, protecting and working collaboratively to make sure that we have things that future generations can benefit from. And clean energy is one. For example, at Port of Belledune, we're looking at things as complex, as exciting, as interesting as hydrogen, ammonia, clean steel, carbon capture. This is something that we can do here in New Brunswick, something that we can be part of. We can be a leader in New Brunswick and Canada in the future of clean energy. So as we move forward, we move with a recognition of the past. We have to accept the fact that there are things that have to change. And there is a solution towards that. You've got the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that set up a whole bunch of recommendations. You have the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples that accept the fact that there are rights holders that have traditionally lived on the land prior to colonization, and therefore there's got to be a recognition that to move forward, there has to be an acceptance of that to some extent. Indigenous peoples are not adverse to development. We, for example, are focused more on the balance. In our particular case, we're looking at what we call 4 pillars: economics, environment, social, and culture. There has to be a balance for all of those as we move forward. So when people look at the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous People, or Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and say, well, we're concerned about the free and prior consent aspect of it and the fact that First Nations can turn it down. Well, we don't turn it down. We do what's best for the country. We do what's best for the community. We do what's best for Mother Earth in conjunction with those 4 pillars, as I mentioned. So I'm optimistic with the future. I think we can and must and will move Canada forward, become a leader, Canada's an example for the rest of the world in terms of how we get together with other people. But yet, we've got a lot to learn. I can go back to a story years ago when I was sitting in an MBA class at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, learning all about doing business abroad. But yet, I'm looking at and saying, well, yes, you have to adjust to the cultures in other countries, I agree. But what about our own country? There was an ignoring that fact. So I started a program where I had second-year MBA students going out into communities for 2 objectives, basically. Number 1, to be a forum for ideas for these people. But secondly, these would be and are future business leaders. So they could understand the culture a little bit more and the priorities of Indigenous peoples and the fact that there is a difference, but there's a common objective. We all want to be better for future generations. We have responsibility that I think are 2 responsibilities as First Nations, as Indigenous peoples. Number 1, to act as stewards for Mother Earth. Number 2, to foster and protect future generations. I think everybody has those same objectives. We must and will, I think, work towards that for a common goal. And as I leave, my thought, with respect to a sort of prayer that I say every day, I say, Creator, grant me the power of eagle wings, the courage and the faith to fly to new heights, and the wisdom to know that my wings will carry me there. Well, I'm optimistic that Canada is going to be a great place in the future. We're going to be part of it. We all must work together, and Canada will be the greatest country in the world.